everyone, this is Lulu from As You Wish Pottery, and in this video we're painting this beautiful Together Forever platter. The instructions are on the lesson plan, so you're more than welcome to follow along. So to begin, we're just going to use a pencil to sketch out the rectangle center. This will just help us later on to know where we're going to be doing our center traceable and things like that. So for now, all I did was just create a rectangle just with the shape that it's on the platter itself. Then I'm going to be using tissue paper and a pencil to sketch over the traceable image. So all you have to do is just set the tissue paper on top of the traceable image and just follow along the lines you see on the sheet. You'll also see that I included some hearts, so this will make it easier for us when it comes to painting or doing the hearts on the rim of the platter. This will just help us later on. So for right now, we're just going to set the lettering on the center of the platter. We're going to align it as centered as we can. So that's where the guidelines come in handy. And I'm just going to use a marker to go over all the lines I just traced onto the tissue paper. Make sure that you're pressing your tissue paper well against the pottery to ensure that the marker bleeds through, and so we can see everything once we pull off the sheet. And remember that the pencil or marker lines disappear once the piece is fired. So right now this is just a guiding point. This doesn't exactly have to be perfect. It's just for us to know where we're going to be doing it. I suggest that you get it centered just because it'll save you trouble later on. And for now, we just have to kind of have it as a guiding point. So it's okay if you have to readjust. Just remember that wherever you set it is where you're going to paint it later. Alright, so next we're going to use the masking tape to secure the edges of the rectangle. Then we're going to use scissors to cut off any excess tape and ensure that the edges are all straight. So what you see here is once you stick your masking tape down, if you were to lift it right where the pencil mark is, you'll be able to see the line right where you sketched. So you'll know exactly where your rectangle or your line will end, so you can cut off any excess right there. And you see I'm doing side by side just so that way I know exactly how far my rectangle will go, how far my lines will be, and then I'm cutting off anything that is over that line that I have traced or sketched. So next we're going to use a pencil to sketch the hearts around the platter, and we're also going to mark whichever we don't want painted. Keep in mind though that in the lesson plan I did include some hearts, so you're more than welcome to just use the tissue paper and trace them over, and then with the marker set them around the rim of the platter, which you'll see me do here. I think it's just a little bit easier to have all the hearts be the same shape and the same sizes, and just keep in mind that this just makes it an easier process when it comes to painting. So instead of having to figure out to ensure that they all have the same sizes, you could just go ahead and start tracing. Another thing to remember is that you should rotate the hearts around. Try not to just do them all facing one direction. Have them rotate so you have the sheet there. You can kind of see where they are. Try not to overlap the hearts too much, just because we want to make sure that they're easier to trace, or I'm sorry, easier to outline later on. Another thing to note is that some of these hearts are not going to be painted. So I'm going to mark the hearts that are not going to be painted with a little X. This will just help me know not to trace those and only trace what I actually want traced. So here I'm just going through and kind of adjusting the hearts that I had already sketched, right? And making sure that they're now the same shape as all the other hearts that I'm tracing. So what I'm doing here is just filling out my rim, making sure that some of my hearts overlap on the masking tape line, having some of them overlap on the rim, kind of coming in from the rim. This will add just kind of a nice little design effect to them, so they're not all the same direction, and some of them are just bits and pieces of the hearts. I think that adds a little bit of an element of kind of a design aspect of it all, and it'll make it look good. So yeah, so rotate your sheet around. Don't be afraid to go different directions on them. Don't be afraid to make some going up, some down, some diagonal, that kind of thing. Have fun with it. Fill the whole rim with as many hearts as you can fit. All right, so here my rim is done. I pretty much sketched all the hearts over. I traced every single one of them I wanted to trace. I might add some little bits and pieces with a pencil. This is just places that I really didn't feel like I needed to trace it. You know, I'm just adding kind of small triangles here. And this is just for me to know if I wanted to add some more bits and pieces to fill in more space, I can do that with a pencil. Again, remember that the pencil disappears, so it's totally okay if you want to just do some quick sketching before you actually paint anything in. And with the pencil now, I'm also going to mark off whichever of the hearts I want to maintain unpainted. So here's a little close-up of the hearts that I will not paint. They all have a little X to them. This will just make it easier for me. When I'm painting, I don't have to think about those. I can just keep going and not stress about them. Now let's get to the fun part. Let's paint our heart. So we're going to use our detail brush and we're going to use some rock and red. I'm going to use the detail brush to kind of create an outline of my hearts, and then I'm going to use a larger brush to paint them in. You're more than welcome to use the detail brush if that's what you like. There's no really right or wrong way to go about it. You just want to make sure that all your hearts are painted with 2 coats of the red. So you'll see that I'll start off with the detail brush. If there's any hearts that are small or like any bits of bit of hearts, you know, like any of the hearts that I have cropped, I will use the detail brush because it makes sense to just paint them with that smaller brush as I'm going. But for now, all I'm doing is just making sure that all my hearts are outlined so that way I can go in and paint them later on. So here you'll see that I'm grabbing my medium round brush and I'm just going to paint in inside the hearts kind of carefully, trying to make sure that I don't go over the shape. And it's okay if you do, just realign it or readjust it as you're going. So you might need to tweak here and there. But I suggest you'll see me doing this going forward. I'm just going to outline all the hearts and then I'll worry about filling them in later. So for right now, I'm just trying to get their basic shape. So I'm just following that traceable line that I created with the marker, and I'm going to go in and outline all the hearts on the rim, and then I'll worry about painting them afterwards. Alright, so all of my hearts are outlined with the detail brush in the red. So now I'm just going to use that round medium brush to fill in the rest of the hearts. Try to go carefully as we don't want any mistakes to happen. And if you do have any accidents, just make sure to let your paint dry and you can kind of scrape it off and then erase it off with an eraser. But in the meantime, all I'm doing is just using the very tip of the brush to fill in my hearts. And remember, about 2 coats. So what that means is I'm going to paint them once. I'm going to let that dry for just a couple seconds and then go in and add another coat to ensure that they all come out really bright and colorful, as well as solid all the way through. With the detail brush, I'm going to also paint the hearts and the center in between the together and forever. This is just, since we have red on our palette, we can just go ahead and paint those. And there's 2 hearts, so just don't forget to paint them before you're done with the red. So now I'm going to rinse off the detail brush, and with it I'm going to outline all the hearts around the rim using black lab. Keep in mind that I'm keeping my masking tape right where it is, just because this will help have a starting point for my lines in some places, and this will also give me a really nice and clean edge between the hearts and the rectangle center. So don't worry about removing the masking tape yet. We're just going to use it as our kind of guiding point, or also as a starting point for those hearts that are close to the inner rectangle. So for now, just work whichever way you feel the most comfortable, left to right, right to left. Remember to rotate your piece, to not just work from it in one direction. Sometimes it's easier to create lines whenever you are rotating your piece, making the piece work for you, not you working for the piece, right? So my hand is never going to stretch too far away from my body, because I want to ensure that I have the most control as I'm trying to do these fine lines and whatnot. I'm also using the very tip of the brush. I'm not pressing my brush too heavily. This is just a soft line that I'm trying to create, as well as I make sure that I offload some of the paint off my brush. So you'll see on my paint palette there's just like some drag marks. That just means that I load my brush and then I take away some of the excess paint, so that way I never have a blob or anything like that at the end of my bristles. So it's just going to be enough paint to create the heart or create a line, and that's it. I'm not trying to overcomplicate it or have any accidents with black, just because it sometimes stains the pottery. So we want to keep black to a controlled minimum, right? So at this point, I'm just going to go through and I'm going to outline all the hearts on my rim, including the hearts that I did not paint. Remember, these ones just get the outlining with black, and it's just easy. Just follow along the lines we created with the marker. And once we're done, we'll move on to the next step. All right, now that all my hearts are outlined, I'm going to carefully remove the masking tape over that inner rectangle. And you can toss the masking tape away. Alright, so using the detail brush, we're going to go over the center lettering with Black Lab. So the same advice applies here whenever you're doing any type of lettering. Make sure that you're not overloading your brush, that you keep your paint on the bristles to a minimum. We want to make sure that we can go over our letters, but we don't want to create just a thick line to begin with. We want to start kind of thin, and then remember, you can always thicken lines as you go. You'll see me do that a lot, where I start off something really thin, I go through each letter and I work on each letter individually, and once I'm done with the whole word, I will go back through and ensure that all the lines have the same thickness to them, the same kind of weight and things like that. So don't stress about having to do it all at the same time. Take your time, work on each letter at a time, see how they fit together, and adjust them as you're going. And once you're done, take a step back, look at how it looks, and then go back in and add a little bit more detail, a little bit more weight, whatever you feel like your letters need once you're done with all with the whole word. Here I'm going upside down just because this is something I do to make myself feel a little bit more comfortable when I'm lettering. I like to go at whenever I'm doing details and that kind of thing, I like to go kind of the opposite end just to ensure that all my lines look really good from both up and down. I don't know, it's something I like to do. It's something fun that ensures that all my letters have the same thickness. I also have the most comfortable advantage point whenever I'm lettering. I like to make sure that things are closest to me just because it helps me control the brush a little bit better. So this is just kind of one of those things that the more you practice, the better you get at it. And another advice is to remember you have that traceable image on your lesson plan. So why don't you practice your lettering right there before you do it on your platter if you're kind of unsure about how to go about a letter or how to get that thickness or that thinness, that to thickness, that kind of thing, that weight difference. You can practice that on paper before you do it on your plate. Find different ways to go about it. See how you're holding your brush, and once you have kind of practiced it out, feel free to go attempt it to your platter. But do not stress about it. Take your time. Remember that when it comes to lettering, it's going to be a slow process, and that's okay. Taking your time with it will ultimately make it look good, I promise. Alright, so here I'm starting on my second word, which is forever. This one's going to be a little bit more cursive, right? So in this concept, it's the same thing. I'm just trying to work one letter at a time, and then once I'm done with my whole letters or with my whole word, I'll go back through and add a little bit more weight to the lines if they need it. But for now, I'm just kind of painting in each letter at a time. Keep in mind that the together took me a while, right, to paint, so the forever is also going to take some time. And this is just to ensure that all my letters look good. You see, whenever I'm doing anything cursive or curly, I like to make sure that my brush has plenty of paint on it. Sometimes I like to add a couple droplets of water to my paint. This is just to thin it out a little bit, but keep in mind that if you're going to do that, you have to stir your paint really, really well before you try to bring your brush from your paint palette to your plate. You want to make sure that you stir the paint and the water mixture to ensure that it doesn't get runny or that it doesn't kind of drip or anything like that. And remember, don't overload your brush, just add a little bit of paint to it. A little paint goes a long way. And remember, you can always thicken your lines. So right now you just want to kind of have a basic guidance to each letter as you're going. You don't want to just try to like rush through it. You want to take your time and make sure that everything looks good. So just one letter at a time, thicken if you need to, and yeah, have fun with it. Alright, so all my lettering is done at this point. So now it's time to add any accents I'd like to add. So you'll see there's some like little accents on the left and the right of the letters. And be aware I did those at the end just because the lettering is what's the main focus, right? So that's the thing I wanted to take the most time on and the thing I wanted to look the best. These are just little accents to the letters or to the platter. So I will work on them once everything else is done. So this is what I just wanted to show, how I broke down the lettering into 3 parts, which was the first letter, the second letter, or I'm sorry, the first word, the second word, and then the details after the fact. All right, so now we're working towards the end of the piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my platter upside down and I'm going to paint the bottom of the platter using the medium round brush and 2 coats of black lab. I just want to make sure that my bottom and the black looks solid. So I'm trying to ensure that there's no paint that drips over or anything like that. So I'm mindful of what I'm doing as I'm doing it. I'm also aware that I want to leave that rectangle on the bottom blank, and this is the perfect space for you to write your name, to write the date, or write a cute message, whatever you'd like to put on there. I'm leaving that unpainted, and you should as well. And then once you're done with your piece completely, you can use the detail brush and add any of those little bits there, like you sign your name, that kind of thing. So for now, all I'm doing is using my medium round brush. I'm coating the bottom of my platter. I'm going about 2 coats or so. 1 to 2 coats is plenty. Just keep in mind, you want to make sure that you keep an eye out on where your hand is and what your hand is touching at all times. That way you don't get any black on the other side. We want to make sure that the other side stays clean or as clean as we can leave it, right? So after I'm done with the bottom of the platter, I'm going to paint the rim of it. Keep in mind that I wanted the rim to kind of come in a little bit more since this platter has kind of a ruffle to it, kind of a wave, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the edge and everything with the round brush, but then I'm going to use my detail brush and I'm just going to go in and just carefully paint a really nice edge that goes over from the rim to a little bit of the inner rim of the platter. So you'll see me doing it here. You'll see where I switch from my round brush, which is the larger one, to the detail brush, and this is just going to be really careful. I'm not trying to go too deep into the ruffles of the platter. This is just for the very edge. This just kind of encases everything together, and I thought it looked really good. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. That's totally up to you. It's a preference type of thing. And I did not do it with the round brush just because that round brush is bigger, right? So I was afraid that if I tried to create that effect, it would just kind of smear through or have paint drip, and I'm not trying to have that. I worked really hard on this platter, so I want to make sure that it looks good all the way to the end. So what I'm doing now is just painting the edge, just because I want that edge to look really nice and clean like everything else, mostly like the bottom, right? And then once I'm done there, I'll switch to my detail brush and I'll do what I'm talking about now. So if you're doing this project at home, I suggest that you take your time and make sure that your edge is paint it all the way through, all four sides of it. And if you're in the studio, you could also use a sponge to create this effect. It takes kind of the same concept. It just makes it a little bit simpler. So if you have a shakier hand, it's something you can totally do with a sponge in an easier way. And if you need any help with that, one of our many associates will be more than happy and willing to help you to achieve that. But if not, you can just achieve the same effect here with the detail brush. Just take your time, don't rush it. Just keep in mind everything looks better if you take a deep breath and just kind of follow along the line that's there for you already. All right, here's a close-up of our finished platter, just as beautiful as we imagined. Apart from that, thank you so much for painting with me. Have a great day and bye-bye.